Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and Diablo 4. Today I'm back for an updated look at the state of Season 2, the classes and their powers compared. Which class is overall the best? Who's done the worst? Well, we're updating the list because of the new pinnacle event, the Abattoir of Zir, where we've really seen some classes push past the others in terms of how effective they are in this content. Things have been progressing to a hilarious point where you need to have close or literal true invincibility to clear the tiers. You might be wondering, has anyone even taken on a tier 25 yet? Well, actually, yes, multiple people have. We even saw footage of that via Rob2628, who was provided with a sigil of tier 25 by a very important player to give it a go, although that resulted in a lot of lag because of the ping. Rob did credit the player who provided the sigil though, and I'm going to be doing the same, but I'm relying on Google Translate here, so fair warning on that. The player's username appears to be this, which seems to translate to Mr. Zhu Zing. Zhu Zing streams on the website live.douying.com, which I assume is a live streaming website based in Asia. The enemies within a tier 25 are level 160 as it turns out, and their health pool is a wall. Before today though, we'd seen at least one proven example of a tier 24 clear, and that was by this player, Mr. Zhu Zing. Until today, this was the highest proven clear in the Abattoir, but the next proven tier 24 happened today as I record this by Rob2628 himself, after adapting the methods used by Mr. Zhu Zing. Where do the other classes compare? Well, there's not going to be a concrete way to know all the facts, but we do have some resources to rely on. The website maxroll.gg has created an unofficial leaderboard maintained and updated by hand. The tracking clears via submission, so players are intentionally providing proof of their clears with videos and screenshots, which is then added to the tally and ranked on the leaderboard. This means it's not going to be accurate all the time, but it does give us an idea of how things stand, so we're lucky to have it, and that's what we're looking at. We'll be looking at solo players though, not teams, and if we do so, you can see there's just this wall of barbarians, and then the regular interval of a sorcerer or two. It's not until you hit rank 35 that you see a third class, which is rogue, and just below that at 42 you see a necromancer, and then all the way at rank 101 you see a druid. Is this a fair representation of the classes and their power in terms of the abattoir? Well, somewhat, but let's talk about each one properly. Starting with Druid with a tier 12 clear achieved by the player Ace of Spade Shots. The build in use was the Shred Druid build, appearing to be the lightning version of that. This was achieved by Ace when at level 15 in the glyph, so there was a lot of potential beyond this for Druids since that's quite a low level compared to the level 50 we're seeing for glyph levels at other higher clears. In the case of this build though, it allows for fast movement pack to pack, dealing massive crits, and considered one of the best builds for speed clearing. You need to clear enough mobs to actually kill enough of them to spawn the Bloodseekers, so it's a good choice with that in mind, but the problem here is the survivability. You need to be able to survive the insane amount of incoming damage, and from watching various runs by Ace with different builds he was trying, well, he was getting popped suddenly many times. A lot of the damage he was taking was completely unavoidable, so yeah, true invincibility is necessary. It's an issue that goes beyond needing more DPS. As stated by many druids at this point, it's unfortunate that crazy bulwark bug with the builds that were happening when that was a thing aren't around anymore, because they could have potentially pushed the higher tiers like the barbs and sorcerers and so on. Rogues have their broken combo point stuff, sorcerers and the infinite ball lightning from crazy attack speed, and obviously just look at barbarians. No one will really be batting their eye if druids had their own broken build in season 2, so maybe it's just a bit bitter for your druids right now seeing stuff like that be accepted in the game when theirs was removed. But moving on, we have number 4, where we have Necromancer with a tier 15 clear. The clear was by Rani Neck, aka Spider Minion. Achieved solo in an impressive time of 7 minutes and 48 seconds, using a build you might expect, Infinite Mist, but with a lot of interesting changes I consider very clever. Rani was using Black River, maximizing the insane amount of corpses that are spawning within these blood forges. This in turn is being efficiently farmed for corpse explosions via Black River, popping 5 at a time and scaling the damage of that. Now interestingly, Rani wasn't using X-Fells to run the damned aspect, a rarely used aspect until now. It enhances the damage you deal with shadow damage, which is, yeah, the main damage here, as long as you're attacking enemies affected currently by both Decrepify and Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden makes enemies take damage when they hit you and can be a great generator of essence, normally only used during Necromancer leveling. Combining both for this build to get that aspect for a huge 50% times damage. That increase is really impactful, and yeah, really smart build choice. Outside of that, more normal picks like Lidless Wall to spread shadow damage better via many Bone Storms, and of course making bigger shields for your shielding storm aspect, but also he's running Conceited aspect, so he's getting more damage while his barriers are going. He's actually not using the Iron Golem sacrifice, but using the Blood one, providing 10% times max life. You might expect him to be using Celigs for survivability, but instead, Ran is using the standard option of Blighted on the amulet for max DPS. Instead, he relies on the Uber unique, the Shaco helmet, netting an extra 20% DR for just that item alone. Still, the final fight with the Bloodseekers in this clear took some serious work, even using the ideal shrine for killing them fast, which is Blast Wave. All of it resulted in a tier 15 clear for Necromancer, which is something I find seriously impressive at this point. But it's still not comparing really to the top clears we're going to get to. At third place above that, it is Rogues, with just one tier higher than that at a tier 16. This clear was by a player that I believe is Russian, so I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, MLJevsky. They managed this in 9 minutes and 25 seconds. Interestingly, the build was officially using Twisting Blades, using Poison Imbuement as standard. But I'm not able to get a clear look at the build this player used because it wasn't shared anywhere with the video evidence upload. So I can only really look at the face value of it. It is very impressive the way this player dives into the center of a pack, insane danger levels here, and just tanks it as a rogue, standing there to deal as much DPS as possible, no movement or evading attacks, just going toe to toe. It's nearly invincible, but not quite so much as Sorcerer or Barbs, but certainly achieving what's necessary to function in these higher tiers. Having said that, he's still getting smashed regularly enough to 50% or less, so the content is still very dangerous even while doing this. In the end, this player cleverly takes on 2 of the Bloodseekers at once instead of trying to take on all 3, and despite that, still gets knocked to sub 10% health multiple times, so pretty scary clear. I am sorry I don't have more information to share on this one, but well done to this player all the same. Moving up to second place, the second most popular class in the Abattoir is Sorcerer, and they're very high in the rankings. Currently they have a tier 20 clear achieved in barely 9 minutes and 55 seconds. This comes from the player Lightning. Naturally, it's a Ball Lightning build, but one that's interestingly credited heavily to North War, a well-known Sorcerer player and theory crafter. North War's Abattoir build suggestions all use a version of Ball Lightning without Celigs, which is very interesting. To use Celigs, you'd use a lot of DPS, of course, but you get that kind of insane survivability that I thought you would need as a Sorcerer. This is the injured version of the build. A simple concept, really. Intentionally let yourself drop to low injured health, so that's 35% or less, benefit from the major damage reduction effects that work around that. Damage reduction while injured is insane. You can get it on boots, pants, and amulets, and the top rolls are seemingly 43.3% damage reduction. So, with all 3, you have an insane 129.9% damage reduction when injured. Combine that with the vampiric power, resilience, and you get another 40% damage reduction on top. But the barriers themselves benefit from the massive damage reduction you're getting while injured. Beyond that, it is classic defensive Ball Lightning, using Ice Blades enchant the whole way alongside the Firebolt enchantment for damage. It would seem that Lightning was at level 25 Tears of Blood at the time of this clear, so if they were to double that to say 50, they would see a major damage increase, and I'm sure that would lead to higher tier clears. Essentially, I think Sorcerer, especially post-patch, has a good shot at a tier 25 at this point. So finally at the top, we have currently Barbarian as the highest tier clearer. Today as I record this, we had our first Western player clear it with evidence, a tier 24, to catch up with that world first by another Barbarian. Rob2628 cleared a tier 24 as a Barbarian, adapting the Whirlwind Hammer of the Ancients dual core build seemingly created for the Abattoir by the Chinese player Mr. Zhu Xing. In the case of Rob, he cleared the tier 24 Bloodforge with a level 53 Tears of Blood glyph, and based on that clear, absolutely nothing is going to stop him and others from using a similar setup and gear, similar strat, to take down tier 25. It's just a matter of time now, with enough Tears of Blood levels, which is, now post-patch, actually attainable. A tier 25 clear seems to be coming. The dual core build is interesting interesting. Just a bunch of shouts, no basic attack, and Whirlwind and Hammer of the Ancients. Whirlwind allows for much better mob clear, and importantly, a way to consistently proc lucky hit effects, getting the attack speed going and so on. The Hammer then is where your real damage is, smashing mobs once they're grouped up and focusing specific targets down. The Barbs are also swapping between the uber unique amulets of Seligs and the unique amulet of Banished Lord's Talisman. Banished Lords allows you to hit way harder with their overpowers, while Selig is keeping them alive. Compared to the world first clear by Mr. Zhu Zing, Rob cleared his tier 24 today even faster. World first was 9 minutes and 30 seconds, while Rob cleared his today at 9 minutes 8 seconds. So based on that, with more levels from the glyph and a roughly 1 minute buffer that was remaining there before a fail, I would say there's every chance that as I make this video, it may have already happened and maybe a tier 25 clear will have been achieved. So at this stage I'd say Barbarians are looking like the clear winners of the challenge, but closely followed by Sorcerers all the same. That brings us to our conclusion. Druids seem to be firmly at the bottom of the ladder, with a mix of problems with both DPS and survivability. Necromancers and Rogues stand above that, pretty close to one another, surprisingly, with some seriously clever build stuff coming out of the Necromancer player, and who knows from the Rogue player since we didn't see that build. Sorcerers seem to have a really good shot at clearing a tier 25, and Barbarians definitely will or may have already done it as I release this video. It's been interesting to look at how people are doing things and see how the builds have evolved. I do think it has brought out some interesting thinking and improvements of skill of the players, but I also feel like it's just not the most interesting content as well. Still, it's good to have an endgame challenge and a pinnacle thing for the end of the season. I just hope that next season, whatever we get for this, is a bit more interesting and rewarding. Either way, I hope this was interesting or even useful to you, but for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.